Welcome back to the channel Just Ask. Before you guys get all bent out of shape because of the title, the reason why I put it that way is because I've been out with my INTJ husband, and some girls, I've never heard guys say this, but some girls will be like, oh, he seems very controlling, or you gotta set the rules, don't let him do that. And I understand how from the outsider it can look as though my INTJ is very controlling. Now, while I do agree that a lot of INTJs I've met do have a controlling nature about them, ENTJs do as well, it's not necessarily the bad kind of controlling. And let me explain what that means. The people that are often said to have very controlling natures are people that know how to take control, who are the best at causing an outcome to be beneficial for everyone in the party. The unhealthy type of controlling is when the person doing the controlling is trying to get everybody else to act a certain way so it can benefit that person alone. Other than that, it just means the person who is responsible for controlling an outcome that is most advantageous for everyone within his or her party. The reason why it would seem like to an outsider that the INTJ is controlling an INFP or whoever he's with is because INFPs love cooperation. And maybe I can't speak for every INFP, but I usually take control of a situation when nobody else is taking control of it. I don't like playing that role, but I am a natural leader if nobody is filling the role. And the INTJ is the same way. As a matter of fact, from my experience, I find that INs and ENs typically get people's attention in terms of having leadership quality and not just knowing how to lead people. There's a difference between inspiring people and outright leading them. But I feel like the ENs and the INs, because they're intuitive and they sit down, they think about things, they can plan well, people tend to take them seriously, or they're good at filling in for leader roles. Everybody has a potential to be a leader. However, personality types such as my father's personality type, which is an ESFP, tend to not be leaders. They're fun to be around and they can get people riled up and make people feel great, but they suck as leaders unless they train themselves very hard to take that role. So the INTJ falls into the category of people who can lead. Every INTJ I've known, especially younger INTJs, don't necessarily like taking that role. As a matter of fact, they don't really go out of their way to lead a whole bunch of other people. They don't really like the responsibility, but if they have their own business or it's part of their job, they're surprisingly natural at it. They're also the most efficient because they're the ones that tell you what needs to be done and how to get to a certain goal, and they don't really let their feelings or how they say things to people affect them getting the goal. That's why people see them as heartless. That's why people see them as robots, because in their mind, AB equals C or 1, 2 equals 3. Unfortunately, when working with a lot of people, you have to take into account their feelings and the way that you say things. So instead of being efficient and just saying, hey, this needs to be done by a certain time, this needs to be done by that. If it's not done, then you're fired. So I can find somebody who's actually more efficient for the role. You have to say A, but Q and T over here has to get to B. And it can be very grueling, which is understandably why many INTJs might not like taking those roles where they have to work with people so closely. Now, if they're a boss and they have their own business, it really doesn't matter because they're the boss. They care less how you feel. But a lot of other people don't really like that or don't understand it. My husband is the same way. And from what I've noticed, the other girls that he dated in the past, they were extroverts. I'm not really sure as to what their personalities were. We talk about them at length when we were talking about our exes together before we started dating. And from what I understood, he would tell them certain things, but they wouldn't listen. And it's not like you have to inherently listen to the INTJ every single thing they say. But these girls were the types of people, especially since they were a lot younger, where they just wanted to do their own thing. They didn't really care what the INTJ had to say. And then when they got in trouble, the INTJ is like, well, whatever. And what I find is that INTJs, when they behave controlling, quote unquote, it may put off a lot of people that are more so free spirits, and they want to do their own thing. And what will happen is that the INTJ will start to disconnect from that person. It doesn't mean he doesn't love them anymore, but it doesn't make any sense for him to waste all of his time admonishing that person when they're going to do whatever they want to do. And what I find also is that the INTJs will love to do the I told you so. That's why you should listen. Nobody listens to me. It's very infuriating to them, especially if it's someone they care about. A lot of the time, the INTJ can see what the effect of your behavior is going to cause. That's why a lot of INTJs are also very, not just shy when it comes to women or having relationships, but also very wary. And based on what my INTJ has said as well, and I've heard from other INTJs, they will pick apart someone before they even start dating them. They can be attracted to someone. Sure, they can fantasize about someone, but they'll never have an actual relationship with that person. And as my INTJ had put it, at the time he was on a dating site following this one girl, he really liked her in terms of how she looked and her personality, but he also looked at her social media and hunted down everything about her and realized that, yeah, I don't think I want this person as a mate. Great as a fantasy, but not as a mate because she has a whole bunch of problems. First of all, she has a medical problem with her spine that is going to rack up the bills, and it may sound cold the way that he says it, but I get where he's coming from because down the line, it would become a problem that would make him very uncomfortable, and he just avoided it all because he could see that far. INFPs kind of tend to do the same thing, except that when we're immature, we just jump into things and ignore those feelings, or we don't process it fully when we're in that emotional state. That being said, as an INFP, when we go out in public and even around our everyday life, it may seem as though I am being controlled by my INTJ. And you know what? To some extent, that is correct. But I will tell you something else. No one controls an INFP unless the INFP allows herself or himself to be controlled. If the INFP has chosen someone, or you notice that someone is controlling the INFP, it is because they chose for that to happen. It is because they allowed that person to put a bridle over them, because they trust that person. And my INTJ is basically one of the only guys I've ever been with that I felt safe around. If I don't feel safe around you, or I realize that you cause trouble or you can't see past your face, I don't respect you. I could love you, but I won't really listen to what you say. A good example of this is my dad. I love my dad to pieces. He's an ESFP, and you know that's the type that likes to party and is really loud and very social, and they get really depressed if they're not around people constantly. And you can imagine how annoying that was for me. I'll make a separate video about what it's like for an INFP living with an ESFP. But when it comes to money, when it comes to certain things like plans, my dad is horrible at it. He's great at giving advice. He knows what to do. He just can't apply it to himself. Horrible with money. Horrible with knowing what the consequences of certain actions are long term. Now that he's much older, he's good with recognizing certain patterns than he was when he was younger, but he's still really shit at planning out stuff. My mom is an INFJ, and she is so annoyed. She loves my dad, but I don't want to say that. I hope my mom's not watching this, but she doesn't really respect him. And I find that not a lot of people, even though people will love an ESFP, they don't really respect them because they follow everyone. Like they always want to make people feel good, but they're also, what's the word? They can't see past their noses. And that's their weakness. And my mom feels as though she's alone because she has to make all the planning and the decisions and the routine. My dad's messy. Like, she feels very, very annoyed and overwhelmed with everything because she has a plan. She has to tell my dad, hey, why aren't you doing this? You're supposed to be doing, you're the man of the house. You're supposed to be doing this. I can't be doing all of it. And it drives her insane. And when I met my INTJ, there's a lot of advice he started giving me. And I knew what to do, but I would try to do it another way, or my emotions would trickle into some of the decisions that I made. And my INTJ would be like, look, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen, and you're not going to like it. Not that he was threatening me, but he was saying the consequences of my actions, of not doing things as efficiently as I could be doing. For example, when we were dating and he was talking about moving up here, he said, look, I know you want to do your little at-home job with business, but the truth is if you want to get out of your parents' home and you want to be sane again, the quickest way is to get this part-time job right here. And even though I knew it, I didn't really act on it as quickly as I should have. I kept saying, well, maybe, let me try a little bit here. If I did this, nah, I don't want to. And the INTJ was like, listen, bite the bullet and stop being inefficient. And I can understand how some people that's controlling, but because he was able to say things that I need to hear that I wasn't listening to when my inner INTJ said it, I respect him. I realize a lot of the things he's done, he's very good with money. He's very good with experience. I'm not saying that he's perfect, but I respect him. And certain things that he's told me to do, when my father found out, my father was so jealous. Oh my God. He's like, why didn't you ask me when it came to a car? And I could have told you this. And I'm like, Dad, you know, and he's like, well, who's a CPA? Who's the one who went to school for this? Who's the one who went to school for that? And I know he didn't mean anything by it. He was just jealous because this other guy that he knew I liked was giving me advice, and I was following him, and I didn't come to daddy for advice. The honest truth is, even though I love my dad to pieces, he is my daddy. I don't really, when it comes to doing taxes, even though he's an accountant, I would rather listen to my INTJ and let's get it done here, because my dad procrastinates as well. With certain advice, my INTJ is way better with money and certain experiences than my dad is. And as an INFP, I'm going to see the most logical way out of this. I've gotten to that age where, I mean, I haven't been that long on the earth, but I've gotten to the point where I know what's best for me. I used to listen to my dad because, you know, it would hurt his feelings if I didn't listen to him, but it doesn't make sense to listen to someone who's inefficient. If I see someone over here is a little bit more experienced in certain things, of course I'm going to listen to that person. If there was something that my INTJ was bad at and my dad was good at, as much as I love my husband, I wouldn't listen to him, I would listen to my father. So that's why it seems as though the INTJ is controlling, because the people who are listening to them are doing everything they say. It's because I trust my INTJ. I respect him. So yes, I am happy to give up the control when it comes to planning. I am happy to give up the control when it comes to finances. If I'm buying stuff, I know how to save money, but sometimes there are those times and I'm like, I don't feel like it. And he has to come in and say, hey, you're being frivolous. I've been frivolous too, but this is not the time to be frivolous. You don't need that. I'm like, I know I don't need it. And hearing him say it out loud helps me to, it basically affirms what I already know. And I listen. Doesn't mean he's controlling me because I don't have a brain. It's because I'm choosing to listen to him. Another guy I dated, he was in a wheelchair. He was an ENTJ. Very controlling, it may seem. He was also a bit of a narcissist, but I can understand because he knew a lot of things. And his family, his brother was an ESFP, and his entire family were extroverts, but they're like the ESFP people who are just like, well, let's just have fun. And he was the one who had to be like, no, you can't do this. No, we can't afford this. And from the outside, or even for me looking at it, it looks like he's the evil villain and everyone else is his minions. Even his mom was like, yeah, you're right. And his brother's like, yeah. But everyone goes to him for advice and they respect him. Even though they're all taking care of him, they respect him because he seemed like the only one with a brain in there because they couldn't plan as well as he could. So that's what it is. If you're an INFP, you probably know what I'm talking about. You can do whatever you want to do, but we also like harmony. So if I have something that I want to do and the INTJ says he doesn't want me doing it, if I don't want to do it, I'm not doing it. He may say that out of care for me because he realizes that maybe it's not as efficient. Now, when it comes to art stuff, I will share one more thing with you in this video. I don't want it to be too long. But there was a time when we were dating and we were still long distance when he wanted me to stop doing my online job because it wasn't as lucrative as it is now. And he stopped doing his because he had his own business that he founded with someone else. And everyone else gave up their online thing or whatever it was they were doing to put all of their time into this and investing their time to that. He told me at the time that while you're doing your part-time job, this other time that you're using for this online thing that's not as lucrative or that you're not really getting any investment back, you could be using that time to get another job or a job with more hours so that this can happen faster for you. He's correct. But the thing is, I also sound down the line. I said, I know where this is going, and it may not seem like anything to you, but in my gut, from my artistic side, I knew this was going to work long term. I said, it is stupid to put off something that will be lucrative for you in the future if you invest in it for a few years just to do something that's a dead end. I don't want to be working for people for the rest of my life. And I told him that. I said, listen, check me back in 5 years and you're going to see how successful this is going to be. There's some things that INFPs just know, especially when it comes to artistic stuff or stuff they're passionate about. And he was very against it and I didn't listen. Everything else, I took his advice, but I didn't listen to that. And now I'm sitting at home. My business is booming and he had to eat his words. He was like, you know what? You were right. Because he stopped doing his and he could have been where I was, but he stopped. And now he's starting to get back into it. So, and I was very proud because everyone wants to show the INTJs, see, this one thing that I had over here, you were wrong. That's so stupid. But that's what I meant by the video, guys. It's not that they're controlling. They can be controlling, but not every kind of controlling is bad. Consider your kids. Nobody wants to admit that they have some level of control over people. Why do you seem controlling to your kids? Because you love them. You do want them to behave a certain way so they don't hurt themselves. You're not going to be like, I don't want to be controlling, so my kid can do whatever they want. And at 6 years old, they find a smoke and they start smoking cigarettes or doing things that little kids that age should not be doing. And you're like, well, I don't want to control them. No, you're a parent. There is some level of controlling nature that you have over your family to keep them safe. And that level of controlling where it is good for the family, where it's good for the individual, is good until that person can make their own decisions or they're of the age where they can think for themselves and they can understand the consequences of their actions. So, by that definition, it is not bad when an INTJ is controlling. Even the INTJ, he admitted that he was controlling. But I'm totally okay with it. Because as long as you know what you're doing, as long as you know how to drive the van that we're in, and you know how to efficiently get there, I will gladly give the wheel over to you. Control me, INTJ. I am at your mercy because I trust you. And I guess that's why some people looking out like that one woman in the grocery store was like, are you guys a dom and sub relationship? And I'm like, yeah, I guess we are. I call my husband daddy. You know, that's just my thing. Because I trust him. If that's weird to some of you, I totally get it. I'm a weird person. But other people who are watching probably understand exactly what I'm talking about. So anyways, that's it for that video, guys. I know it's kind of weird, but I hope that for those of you who are wondering about INTJs and you always see them and something turns you off about them because they seem controlling or the way they speak, they don't mean anything by it. It's just that their brains work efficiently. And if they're taking the time out to give you advice that seems controlling, count yourself very honored because they're utilizing that time that they wouldn't use on somebody that they don't care about. It's because they do have a measure of care towards you, why they're saying that. Even if you're a stranger off the street and they're saying that to you, count that as a little measure of care or altruism, just a little bit. Because if they didn't care, they would be like, oh, okay, that person's an idiot. That's not going to end well. No, but they're taking the time to do it. Count that very lucky. And at the least you could do is consider the advice that a mature INTJ gives you. Anyways, I hope that helped to clear up some things. Sorry the videos are usually so long. I try to put a lot of detail in because there's a lot of videos that just list out things like, yeah, they can seem this, they could seem that, but they don't break it down so you could probably understand. And that's what I try to do in the videos. That's why they seem so long. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. If you have any other questions about certain subjects, doesn't have to be just Myers-Briggs. It can be about relationships or just life stuff in general. Just ask.